of Pennsylvania has vacated the conviction of Bill Cosby, who was convicted for sexual assault of a woman named Andrea Constand, who had accused him of drugging and raping her. Cosby has maintained her innocence. Constand, of course, is one of 60 women who have come forward to accuse Cosby of sexual assault. The issue in the majority opinion of the Pennsylvania Supreme Court today was they contended that a decision not to prosecute Cosby back in, I believe, 2004 by then District Attorney Bruce Castor in Montgomery County, in exchange, as it was understood, for civil testimony, was essentially a kind of, immunity that had been granted, and then that civil testimony being entered into the prosecution of Cosby violated his right against self-incrimination. I think I have that right. What do you make of that reasoning, Katie? What is your reaction to the news?
I read the 79-page opinion. Chris, the analysis is flawed. I mean, I have respect for judges and justices, but it's wrong. And let me tell you why. The deal that was never papered, there's no document that anybody can point to say was the deal that was reached between then DA Bruce Castor, who, footnote, was one of Donald Trump's impeachment attorneys, by the way. Then DA Bruce Castor allegedly entered into some type of negotiation with Andrea Constand's lawyers and Bill Cosby's criminal attorneys back then to be able to agree to not prosecute Bill Cosby in exchange for a civil suit to proceed against Bill Cosby. And then he could testify without fear of any type of self-incrimination. Well, time out. There's no written document. And let me tell you why this is so wrong. You had trial court on two separate occasions find that this did not violate Bill Cosby's due process rights. And then you had an appellate court say that that was the right decision as well. And the reason why the appellate courts sometimes get it wrong, Chris, is the following. The appellate courts look at something called a cold record. They only get the benefit of a transcript. But these trial judges, they can assess the credibility of the witnesses. Bruce Castor testified. The lawyers for Andrea Constand testified. This trial court judge found that Bruce Castor's credibility was equivocal at best. I think it was the language that was used in the opinion. But Andrea Constand's lawyers emphatically denied that they ever negotiated this. So if there was never an agreement to be able to do this quid pro quo of whatever it is, then how can you have a violation of Bill Cosby's due process rights? It's not the right result. It's not the right result on the law. And I think it's not the right result in terms of public policy. I think it was the wrong decision that was made.
Yeah, the footage we're showing, of course, Bill Cosby actually was released today. He's home now, a free man as of now. The case that I've seen, the argument laid out in the dissent in this case goes along the lines of Katie. The picture that is painted, as I can best understand it, is that Castor, when he's serving as a district attorney, basically doesn't want to charge Cosby or decides not to, but recognizes later that it kind of looked bad and sort of retroactively constructs a story about how that was actually done to get his participation in this civil suit. And to Katie's point, how much do you think it matters that there's no actual written record of the supposed deal that is at issue?
Chris, I agree with everything Katie said, and it's hard to overstate how much it matters. I'm going to put it in context, but first, there's a bigger point that needs to be made clear based on that 79-page opinion. If you take Castor at his word, what he's saying is he allowed Cosby to reach an agreement that allowed him to pay his way out of being prosecuted for sexually assaulting someone, because the deal he's suggesting he reached could have never been reached if Cosby wasn't rich, which should be a problem for everyone. But let's take in context what the Supreme Court said here, because what they're saying is that if a prosecutor makes a public statement that he won't move forward, then that is the equivalent of a deal for immunity that bars subsequent people who hold the same office. So let's look at a specific case that puts this injustice in context. Ahmaud Arbery, the young man who was murdered in Georgia, essentially by a slave patrol, had his case swept underneath the rug by the prosecuting authority who refused to move forward. A subsequent prosecutor said, that was wrong, and I'm going to make this right. Under today's ruling, that second prosecutor would not have been allowed to prosecute his killers for murder, which works in extreme injustice, as we're seeing here.
Yeah, the point here is that Castor puts out a press release, which is the only, Katie, to use your term, paper here, right? The only written record. Again, we're all talking about lawyers who paper everything. That's what they do. The only written record is this press release, which I think the prosecutors and others have argued essentially is a representation of an act of prosecutorial discretion. And to Dave's point, the question is, like, does that bind future offices? Is an act of prosecutorial discretion actually some ironclad deal, which then cannot be, taken back by future prosecutors? I guess the question, Katie, also is, was the mistake on the part of prosecutors here entering that civil testimony, even if they got the trial judge to basically say it was okay?
No, because he could have still invoked his Fifth Amendment right against self-incrimination. And, he didn't. And he gave completely, he claimed it was consensual contrary statements to law enforcement already. And so it wasn't like he was induced. And that's the problem here. The Pennsylvania Supreme Court says Bill Cosby was induced and he detrimentally relied upon this press release as the reason why he testified. We don't have any evidence of that. And I think that is where this is so wrong. All of the cases cited to by the Pennsylvania Supreme Court majority opinion says that when a prosecutor makes a plea bargain with a defendant, then it violates the due process rights of the defendant if the defendant relies upon that, which is promised by the prosecutor. What was the promise here? Just because you exercise prosecutorial discretion and you don't prosecute Bill Cosby doesn't mean I'm guaranteeing you the immunity that I was saying I'm giving to you. That is not, there's no evidence of it. And I'm really troubled by this decision.
David Henderson and Katie Fang, thanks for joining me. I really appreciate it. Still ahead, why is South Dakota Governor Christie